A very warm welcome to the Game Changers Summit, part of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development's 7th World Investment Forum, coming to you virtually for the first time ever. My name is Ana Maria Montero, and it is really my great pleasure to be your guide today for what I am certain will be an inspiring exchange with entrepreneurs and business people that are, in fact, changing the game. We're going to have more of that in just a moment. Now, whether you're joining us from your office, your home, or even your smartphone, from wherever you are across the globe, at last count, there were thousands of you, it is great to know that you are out there and as invested as we are in achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. In the next couple of hours, we'll be looking at how technology, health, environment, society, and business can and are coming together to achieve this future. And by my count, I think we're going to be looking at a solid handful of SDG goals. And we're going to do this with the help of some really inspiring, shall I say, just global rock stars like Mariana Vasconcelos, Christophe Gebald, Jack Sim, Neely Nicolise, Aruna Chalam Muruganantam, Jens Holstein, and Andrew De Leon, whom again, you will all meet momentarily. But first, in order to help us set the tone for this Game Changer Summit, I'd like to invite Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, Secretary General of UNCTAD, to the stage. Ms. Greenspan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria, and let me thank all the panelists for being here with us today. I want to thank all the excellencies that also will be with us in the panel with their record messages, and everybody that is listening to this very important panel. Really, I would like to welcome all of you to the Global Game Changers Summit. Earlier today, in the opening ceremony in this World Investment Forum, I made the point that we need to adapt to a new normal of larger and maybe more common external shocks. We're only 21 years into the 21st century, and we have already lived through two massive shocks: the 2009 global financial crisis and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. What this means is that the window of opportunity between shocks are now even more important. To build resilience is simply to know how to rebuild, to close the fractures that make us fragile, such as increasing wealth and gender inequality, and to strengthen our capacity for collective action and response. We did not make use of our last window of opportunity. The 12 years between 2009 crisis and this pandemic were marked by growing inequalities, both within and between countries, as well as shrinking multilateral action, the exact opposite of what we needed. We now have a new window of opportunity. It is important we don't waste it, because in a world of climate change, I am sure more shocks will come. What I am not so sure of is how many opportunities we have left. This is why this Global Game Changer Summit is so important. We simply have to change this investment status quo, because it is simply not fit for building resilience. In a world awash with cash, with the richest saving glut and greatest liquidity in the history of mankind, far too many resources are going into rentier activities in already mature markets with high carbon footprints, and far too little into the green transition into developing countries and productivity enhancing technological innovations. Too little is going for new markets and new ideas. Too little is going for innovation. In the last 12 years, while the SP 500 has quadrupled in value, global foreign direct investment has declined by 20%. And less than a third of all climate adaptation investment, as measured by the 2030 Agenda, has been committed. More recently, what the IMF calls the greatest return on investment in history, the $50 billion investment gap to produce real vaccines, equity around the world is not coming and is still seriously underfunded. As a result, less than 3% of all people in least developed countries have been vaccinated, while rich countries are already talking about the third doses. In a recovery that should build resilience and close gaps is instead opening them and making us even more fragile than before. Clearly, the problem is not that we don't have enough money. It's that it's going to the wrong places. Incentives are misaligned. Resources are misallocated. And risks are mispriced. We need to change the rules of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, UNCTAD has a track record of thinking outside the box when it comes to making investment work for sustainable development, which is why we attach so much importance to the Game Changers Summit that you are with us today. Here, we have brought together people and companies that have revolutionized their respective sectors with their ideas, passion, and technologies. People that have shown that sustainable development is not only urgent, but also profitable, also possible, not only for investors, but also for people and the planet. The 2030 Agenda makes clear that sustainable development is a collective, bottom-up effort. Therefore, it is incumbent upon not only governments, but also a new private sector to come up with shovel-ready projects that green the economy and produce more cohesive societies. This new game changed. Companies integrate social, environmental, and health imperative in their business model. It is my hope and expectation that this new sector will become one of the most important investable markets towards sustainable development worldwide. By showcasing these pioneering ideas and companies, it is our hope to drive investments into the nascent market and to emphasize the need for policymakers to create environments that help game-changing enterprises grow and multiply. It is my hope that our speakers will also inspire young people and entrepreneurs around the world to innovate and develop out-of-the-box business ideas and concepts with a tangible impact on sustainability and shared prosperity. So let's not miss this opportunity to change the game. Let's change it. We count on you to be able to do that. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Greenspan, for those inspiring words and really thoughtful and, dare I say, also sobering reminders of the work that still needs to be done, but also hopeful for all of the change that we can see, especially coming out of the labor of some of our participants today. So again, thank you so much for setting the stage for today's conversation.
Thank you.
All right, so to follow up a bit on what Ms. Greenspan has said, what is a game changer? When I looked it up in the Oxford Dictionary, it says an event, an idea, or procedure that affects a significant shift in the current way of doing or thinking about something. Well, I'm happy to say that be they large established corporations or young pioneers of the digital revolution, that is exactly what the people you will meet today are doing with their talents and resources. By combining successful business models that deliver pioneering solutions and tangible payoffs for sustainable development with tools provided by the new Industrial Revolution 4.0, they are creating massive shifts in the way that we use AI to boost productive capacities in developing countries, ensure equal and sustainable access to healthcare, accelerate the shift to renewable energies, sustainable production and consumption, reduce inequality, and create economic value through decent work and labor rights, and by making the case for the company as a social enterprise, from philanthropy to B corporations, which is in fact at the heart of today's conversation. And I don't know about all of you, but I very much look forward to hearing how these businesses and the private sector in general support business models that help address our most urgent global and local challenges, including climate change and, of course, the post-pandemic recovery. Now, a quick reminder before we jump in that you can submit these questions, any questions, via the platform to our speakers throughout the session, and these will be addressed towards the end. As always, we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. So without further ado, let's do it and meet these game changers. And I don't know about you, but I want to learn something. So I'd like to first start by introducing the CEO and co-founder of AgroSmart, Ms. Mariana Vasconcelos. Mariana, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mariana, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Brazil.
Where in Brazil?
I'm originally from Minas Gerais, but today I'm in Campinas, that is the headquarters of the company, like 1 hour from São Paulo.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, so as I understand it, Mariana, with AgroSmart, you are literally bringing the smart to farming, right? Or to agriculture. Tell me just off the top, as a Latin American leader, when it comes to agricultural digital platforms, your mission is to make it more productive, sustainable, resilient to climate change. You bring this technology to developing countries with low internet infrastructure under tropical agronomic conditions, allowing farmers to make better decisions for a more productive and sustainable agriculture. Did I get that right?
Yes, totally.
All right.
Exactly.
So as a part of a young generation of game changers, you made good use of these tools, as we mentioned earlier, the new industrial revolution to develop innovative solutions. And in your case, you've applied them to enhance agricultural performance and sustainability. I realize that you are the daughter of farmers, but at what point did this inspiration come in to bring together these two worlds that seem so small, so far apart as is a small scale agriculture, together with the technologies of the new industrial revolution?
Yes. So first I had experience with the industrial revolution itself together with the industries. So I was applying Internet of Things and artificial intelligence to improve the results of an industry. So I got familiar with the technology side. And then at some point I stopped why am I not doing this to agriculture? That on the other side, like you mentioned, I'm daughter of farmers. And agriculture is facing many challenges. We need to increase food production in up to 70% to feed almost 10 billion people into 2050. We need to tackle how to use better water because we are undergoing water crisis in several regions, and irrigation is such an important tool to extract more production out of the same space, mitigate climate risks, and even allow us to have more seasons in the year. And land is another issue. There is very few available land as many soil is degraded. And the available regions are Latin America and Africa, which have a lot of problems with infrastructure. And my generation don't want to stay in the field, right? Everyone is looking for a better life. You don't want to be related to agriculture anymore. unless there was climate change. So like everything that farmers knew how to do, how to operate, it's changing, and it's changing very fast. So I saw that from my family, from my region, and friends' situations, and like how they are having a hard time to trust their intuition and copy neighbors that they have always done. Now, with this constant moving, and the market is demanding way more from them. The consumers want more transparency, more traceability. So we said, okay, we need to put this in service of that. Like we need to link the two words. And that's how we started like creating a huge mindset change in the whole agriculture sector. So like for us to make it available for the smallholder farm, we had to engage the agricultural supply chain in its entire, like we had to make a systemic change so we could reach the smallholder farm.
That's really inspiring, Mariana. And how did we mentioned also in the post-pandemic time, and you just mentioned the global supply chain. What kind of challenges has this brought to your particular sector?
Well, there is several challenges that we really need to solve in order to scale those technologies and change the food system. As we know, the pandemic was actually a nice moment because it raised the awareness around food, right? Like everyone was so worried about how the health crisis, and they thought we cannot have a food crisis. So we need to look at that now. We need to understand the climate change and its effects now. So, but we still, like, in order to scale technology to farmers is so hard. First of all, is infrastructure. Like still today, like 7 years after I started this business, only 23% of the farms in Brazil have internet. And if we want them to have digital access, we need to increase connectivity. And it's not a matter of technology. Like I saw the 2G, 3G, 4G, narrowband IoT, Sigfox, now satellite and 5G. It's not a matter of technology. It's a matter of business model. It's how we can make the math flows and make sense for the telecom industries and everyone else. Because just putting internet brings no return on investment for the farmer. And in the farm, there is way less people than in the city. So for the telcos companies, it's not worth the investment. So we need to work around and forming systems and communities in order to make that work, like in link people and build a network of connectivity. So that's the first thing. The second thing is education. Like it's very hard for changing a mindset to work predictive instead of on how they have always doing it. And like a lot of the labor in the farmers are not well educated. So we need to work on digital inclusion and education in general, on awareness on why it is important to change the way they behave, why it's important to preserve our forests, why it's important to understand the plant and give them what they need in this whole precision ag universe, and not just do things as they did before. And that requires effort from everyone, from governments that have to teach in school and have to digitally include everyone in every sector. Because if a farmer is watching Netflix and if they use WhatsApp, that helps on them becoming used to use the technology in other sectors, right? So we need like the private sector, civil society and government effort on educating. Unless this financial access, it's still very expensive to invest in technology, to transition to more sustainable food production systems. So we need like access to credit so farmers can buy technology and invest in this transition. So like we need to put the three things together, and that's why we are here in this forum, an investment forum, because we need to invest in education, infrastructure, and access so we can have these scale and actually achieve the 2030 goals.
Now, you just mentioned the role of government, right? And I wondered, how can government policies then, how can they help you nurture these new initiatives in order to support food security in developing countries?
Well, in many areas, in all of the ones I mentioned, they can support and they can help. So I think it's a role of government, first fostering and incentivizing the development of innovators and technology and create this whole ecosystem to be good enough to create new ventures in agriculture. That's how you start. And then when the ecosystem starts maturing, like now with water, for example, we are undergoing a water crisis. It should be already a legislation that requires for farmers when they irrigate to comply using some kind of irrigation decision-making method. It can be a consultancy or it can be a digital tool or something, but governments have to start requiring things from the supply chain, from the industries until the smallholder farmer. and support the access with the financing that they need to implement it. So we see like, and also the data that we have can support in the public and policy making. Like we have enough data on what regions are critical and how farmers are behaving here and there to support the policy making, but we need it to become policy.
All right, thank you so much, Mariana. I can't wait to hear more from you towards the end, where we will have a discussion with all of the panelists. And of course, feel free to submit your questions for Mariana and for the remainder of the guests throughout the session. Thanks again, Mariana. Okay, our next guest now is co-founder and co-CEO of Climeworks, Christoph Gebald. Hello, hello. Where are you dialing in from?
Hi, everyone. First of all, let me thank you for the very kind invitation. It's a big honor and privilege to be with you. And I'm talking to you from Zurich, Switzerland today.
Lovely. We're not so far away then. I am also dialing in from Zurich, from Switzerland today. All right, so Christoph, now to the heart of what it is you bring to the table. It's a Swiss company, Climeworks, right? You specialize in carbon dioxide air capture technology. And here we go with my very brief explanation. I hope I get this right. The company filters the CO2 directly from the ambient air through an absorption-desorption process. Is that a thumbs up?
That's a thumbs up.
Okay.
So far,
I remember when you first made headlines, actually. It was in 2017, and you opened the world's first commercial project to filter CO2 from the ambient air. And I remember it was really a lot to, there was a lot of coverage of that. And then in September 2021, you opened the Orca carbon capture plant, or it came online, the carbon capture plant in Iceland. So and then of course you're capturing now more than 4,000 tons of CO2 per year. So, I mean, your new technology has a huge potential to fight against climate change and really provide real game-changing solutions. I mean, no pressure, right?
No pressure, no. We're engineers going step by step, exactly.
Yeah. All right, your company was, like we said, the first in the world to develop this commercial project based on this direct air capture. And your mission is to inspire 1 billion people to remove CO2 from the air using this technology. How do you plan to do this?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Anna Maria. So first of all, let me explain why we should remove CO2 from the air. Well, essentially, to achieve climate targets, we have to do two things. First and foremost, we have to reduce as much CO2 as we can. On top of that, we also have to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Why do we need to do that? Because we will be unable to reduce all CO2. There will always be a small pillar of CO2 remaining, and that needs to be removed in turn to bring it to a net zero. Also, there are historic emissions. We are about to emitting too much, and we might need a technology or means to remove historic emissions. So this is the reason why we're doing that. The size of the challenge, according to climate science today, is that we have to remove 2 to 20 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere by 2050. Now, how are we doing it? And Anna Maria already gave a brief explanation to it. We are essentially building very large machines that do have ventilators, and you can imagine those machines suck in air containing obviously CO2, and the machines release again air without CO2. And on the side, we obtain a stream of pure CO2 that we filtered from the air. Now, the big question is, what are we doing with that CO2 that we filter? And we pump that CO2 underground for permanent storage. As you alluded to, we just commissioned the world's largest, it's called, like our field is called direct air capture. We commissioned the world's largest direct air capture and storage facility in Iceland, where we have a storage partner there called Carbfix, and they are taking the CO2 Climeworks is filtering from the air and pump it several hundred meters down the ground in porous rock. The rock is called basalt, and for those who have their camera turned on, I brought a little sample with it. Maybe you can see it. It's actually it's a gray rock, like the pristine rock, and you can see white dots on this rock, and the white dots is the mineralized CO2 that we pump underground. So essentially, what we're doing is we capture CO2, pump it underground, and in the underground it's turned into stone. This is why we're doing that. This is an especially permanent way, and an especially safe way, and an especially additional way of removing CO2 from the earth. There's no question that this stone will turn into gas anywhere in the future. Like, this is permanent for thousands, even 100,000s of years, and in such locking away the CO2 permanently. Now, what are we doing, or what are we offering to people? We offer people the service to permanently remove CO2 from the air. On the one hand, we're currently offering that to people as well as to companies. On the people side, people like Bill Gates are using our service. Just last week, we announced a partnership with a band called Coldplay. You might know they are using our service for net zero touring. On the company side, we have companies like Microsoft, Stripe, Shopify, The Economist, Audi, Swiss Re working together with us. Now, from the platform that we established in Iceland, we are aiming to scale 10x in capacity every 2 to 3 years, so that we will be at million-ton capacity in the second half of this decade. And from there, scale to gigaton removal capacity by 2050, which is precisely what climate science asked us to do. And well, I hope you find that inspiring on our journey to inspire 1 billion people to remove CO2 from the air.
Definitely inspiring. Thank you, Christoph. Just out of curiosity, why Iceland?
Iceland for 2 reasons. On the one hand, because of this piece of rock that I brought with me, like the storage conditions in Iceland are excellent and enable permanent storage. And on the other hand, Iceland also is home to a lot of renewable energy sources, for example, geothermal sources or hydro sources. And our operations do require energy, and we want to supply the energy solely via renewable energy. And therefore, Iceland is really a very nice place to start what we're doing.
And in your experience then, Christoph, as a carbon negative pioneer, working with governments, what kind of investment policies would you favor to help carbon negative companies thrive in the future and account for a larger proportion of private businesses?
Let me mention 3 points to that. The first one is deployment support, where we are currently seeing increasing innovation or research and development support for what we're doing, which is great. Please continue to do that. We are lacking deployment support. You have to imagine the next plant that we will be building will cost several hundreds of $millions, right? So far, our plants have been largely financed by private money. On top of that, with some grants like innovation grants or research and deployment grants. Now, what we're lacking for the next steps is some mechanisms that can help us to share like those hundreds of millions of investment. To give an example, for every point I'm giving, I'm bringing an example with me. In 2010, the electric vehicle producer Tesla, for example, received from the Department of Energy in the US $465 million deployment support, so to say. And it would be, well, clearly Tesla would have made it anyway, but maybe that has been facilitating. Now, point 1, in summary, deployment support. Point 2, incentives. Currently, the market is dominated, or is a voluntary market dominated by pioneers like Bill Gates, Microsoft, Shopify, Swiss Re, you name it. All of them I mentioned before. Now, it is not clear that beyond those pioneers, the large share of companies will be taking the same risk, if you want, the same market risk as those pioneers are taking. And in such, market incentives can help to support offtake of what we're doing to match the gap between the production cost of what we're having and the willingness to pay we're having in the private sector. To give an example here, the support, the subsidies for solar photovoltaic in the 2000s years, for example, in Germany, or we've seen that in Japan, California, elsewhere, have been a very powerful mechanism to get solar power off the ground. And this is something we can also think about as a very powerful mechanism for what we do, a subsidy program where the gap between the cost and the willingness to pay, so to say, is matched by an incentive, which initially is higher, and then decreasing over time and helping us to get, sort of place the CO2 removal capacities on the market. And lastly, again, current market is voluntary, and we need to move to a regulated market. Like once those subsidies, for example, expired, I always give this very trivial example or a simple example. Today, when we enter airplanes, we have to show a COVID certificate. And I hope that in 2035, we will be forced to show our CO2 certificate. So from a currently purely voluntary action, we have to move to regulated action.
All right, Christoph, thank you so much. Deployment, incentives, regulation, and eventually a carbon certificate or a CO2 certificate. We'll see. Thanks again for those insights. And again, remember, if you have questions for Christoph, we can try to get to as many as possible at the end. All right, 40% of the world's population does not have access to toilets. And more than 800 children under 5 die every day from diseases due to poor sanitation, poor hygiene, or unsafe drinking water. Our next guest is addressing exactly this when he founded the World Toilet Organization, a global nonprofit committed to improving toilet and sanitation conditions worldwide. It is my pleasure to introduce our next guest, Mr. Jack Sim, a serial social entrepreneur who also founded the Bottom of the Pyramid Hub and who led the campaign to break the silence on the sanitation crisis.
Okay, I found this on the web.
Hello, Jack. Hello, so nice to see you. Where are you calling us in from?
Check it out.
I'm from Singapore, and very glad to join you. It's
What time is it over there? Yes, it's quite late.
Yes.
10:30. 10:30, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you again for staying up with us. Even more appreciative.
Yes. So you like me to describe a little bit what we do?
Yes, but and even more than that, I would like to know what led you to focus your attention on the need for improved sanitations worldwide. I mean, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but what is it that made you say, this is where I want to put my energy for X amount of years to come?
Oh, yeah, because when I was 40 years old, I was a businessman and I made some money, and I started to ask myself, how long does people live? And the answer is we die between 80 to 90 years old. So I set myself a countdown clock to see how many days do I have before I die at 80 on my 80th birthday. And it was 14,600 days. So in this case, I do not need to continue making more money because I don't need it. If I live a very simple life, then the rest of my life, I have to use the time, which is more precious than the money, to do something useful for society. And I start looking around to see what is the biggest thing that nobody wants to do. And I then found that toilets, nobody wants to do this. And at that time, 40% of the world population don't have access to proper sanitation. And the UN system were calling it a water agenda. I say it makes no sense because this is about shit, it's about poop, it's about pee, and you can't say it because you're also wearing jackets and very nice people. You can't say such rude words. But then, if you don't speak about it, you cannot solve. So I use humor to make it really funny. And if you see my screensaver, it says Royal Flush. And that's me holding a plunger, right? A plunger. And the 007, which is a movie in the cinema now, you turn it upside down, it becomes a loo. So we keep on creating this kind of very humorous message. And then the media goes crazy. The media went like wildfire. And suddenly a subject that is a taboo become legitimate. And so after 12 years of our existence, the United Nations General Assembly adopted our founding day, 19th of November, as the official UN World Toilet Day. So now we have transformed something unspeakable to something that everybody pay attention. Last year, we just helped change the law in Brazil to allow public-private partnership investment into their water treatment plant, because 50% of all the sewage in Brazil was not treated. And they need to pass this law to allow the private investment to go into the government-owned sewage treatment plant. And by lobbying and advocacy, it actually passed through. And I heard that by 2034, the total investment will be 131 billion US dollars. So that's a lot of money just by advocacy. And advocacy is very, very important for policy change.
Thank you so much for that, Doug. That is inspiring in the sense that it's really you took on something that, as you said, someone that most people didn't even want to touch, and have made it an accessible topic that we can actually talk about and call it what it is, so to speak. What kind of support are you getting? I mean, you just mentioned Brazil, but where else in the world do you feel like governments and countries are really embracing this call to action?
So over the last 5 years, 6 years, we've been working with India. Prime Minister Modi has decided that sanitation is too big a problem, that if you don't solve it, the country will never get out of poverty, because a nation of sick people can never prosper. So he started building this Clean India mission, and he's completed building 110 million toilets for all the poor people. And so this is the biggest toilet construction project in the history of mankind. And why are politicians building toilets? It's because it's actually a vote winner. If you promise the people that you will build toilet, you win elections. So it's not just the prime minister, it is the member of parliament and everybody else. So I think with the media driving demand for people to have toilet, politicians are realizing that this is a ticket to success. And in countries where there is no election, like China, you see that they also want to be popular and wants to do the right thing for sanitation. And over the last 5-6 years, President Xi Jinping himself has become a toilet champion, and with his China Toilet Revolution. And you see, just by creating the UN Day, World Toilet Day, the legitimacy allow very important heavyweights to become toilet champion. The two biggest countries with the biggest number of people, their leaders are now toilet champions. So we can see the transformation of tourism toilet, absolutely amazing in China. And now he's going into rural toilets. So what I'm like everybody to contact me if you need help to advocate about the change of law, of policy makers, because a lot of time people do not calculate the externality, the negative externality of polluted rivers full of shit, and then the people who drink the water get sick, and 2 million people die of diarrhea every year. So all these unproductive health issue can be prevented just by proper sanitation and hygiene. And even COVID is a hygiene problem that, when you don't stop it, it becomes very, very expensive. So I would urge everybody, please contact me. I can help you promote sanitation in your country. And in my country, I grew up in the slum, and we were all very poor, and we became so rich as a country because we are healthy and productive. Singapore.
Thank you, Jack. And of course, the 19th of November is the World Toilet Day, designated by the UN. So just around the corner. All right, Jack, thanks again for that. And we will hear again from you later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, our next guest now is joining us from Africa, South Africa. Nile Nicolise, she is co-founder of 3DIMO. Nile.
Hi, Anna Maria.
Hello, there you are. I'm very well.
San Francisco, not South Africa.
Excuse me, sorry, that's where you're from. My bad,
Yes.
that's where you're from. San Francisco. Also, just starting the day for you.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so good morning. Okay, you are co-founder of two game-changing companies. So iMedTech is biotech, optimizes access to breast prosthetics for breast cancer survivors. And 3DIMO, a venture-backed agri-tech company that automates livestock data analytics to monitor livestock farms' productivities. Now, you've been recognized as a female innovator in Africa by the World Economic Forum, South African Youth of the Year in 2017, Forbes 30 under 30. Also like Mariana, one of the other panelists, and Industrialist of the Year in Southern Africa, at the All Africa Business Leaders Awards. So, if you don't mind, you tell us, you co-founded two highly successful businesses that rely heavily on digital technologies. Could you tell us what are your thoughts on this ongoing new industrial revolution and how can it contribute to a more sustainable future?
I always think that, ever since we started the conversation of the fourth industrial revolution and talking about how we need to start doing a lot of tech penetration within the developing world, part of it is to bridge the gender gap and also to bridge the skills gap we have on the African continent. I've always believed that it needs to be more beyond about technology. It needs to be about people focusing on human development quite a lot. I think we sort of talk about technology as if it's going to be the be-it and all of human development. I always believe that it's a tool that should be used by people who are dedicated to increasing access to opportunities on the African continent. But be it that way, for the past 5 years, we have seen how the continent has benefited quite a lot from technology penetration, and that success is owed to a lot of young innovators that have built successful businesses to help push Africa from one level to the next. One of those is a lot of fintech solutions that have increased access to digital payments. We've also seen a lot of mobility startups that have enabled a lot of people around the continent to move easily, and various other technologies which in some parts of the developing world are literally are quite established, but on the African continent are still at their infancy stages. We've seen a benefit of technology, but I always believe that it's a tool. It's not the be-it and all.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. It is not the end all be all, as you were saying. It's a tool at the end of the day. And what is it that in your mind needs to really come alongside it and make this tool really take us to this next level, to this more sustainable future?
I think we need to, people have been talking about it quite a lot on how we can start being more of an innovative society as opposed to just becoming a consumerism society. That is what we see a lot in emerging markets, which is quite different in the developing world. I mean, we can take some lessons from what happened throughout a lot of global crises in history, how post the global crisis, it shifted a lot of focus into innovation. So we need to start being more innovative. We need to start building futuristic tech that addresses the challenges of the future, and be less more of building survivalist solutions. We need to start saying, because Africa is a continent, and also talking about a lot of other emerging markets that have the same type of identity as the African continent, is in need of global shapers that get to build some sort of innovations that are more tailored and understanding of the challenges of society. One of those things I could take from some of the examples that some of the people have spoken about, how to do carbon offsetting. But carbon offsetting on the African continent might be different from carbon offsetting in the US, because a lot of times on the continent, we might not have a lot of industries or companies that contribute quite a lot to climate change, as opposed to in the US. But then we still find that a lot of our carbon contribution comes from agriculture. So how do we start building new ways, parallels on how we can start protecting our environment, maybe focusing a lot more on agriculture? And that includes ways on how we can shape agriculture to be more of contribute to offsetting carbon by applying different principles such as regenerative farming. So those are some of the things that we say we need to tailor make solutions that are tailored for emerging markets that might not have the same type of profile as in developed worlds, but then build society.
All right, thanks for that. Now, if we look a moment at your personal experience, you are a young African female pioneer, entrepreneur in the STEM field. What would be your advice on how to promote a wider participation of women and minorities in entrepreneurship and business leadership positions?
I think we have said it so many times that this is the greatest moment to start seeing a lot of young women participating in tech, participating within the science and technology fields. We say it quite a lot of times, but I believe that we need to start creating enabling environments for that to start being in fruition, because a lot of the spaces that we talk about, those are usually in established spaces. So the spaces that we exist in San Francisco, it's an established space for one to easily say to women, you need to be in the tech space. And we have seen that happening quite a lot. I think that message needs to filter down to, into your rural communities where there aren't a lot of enabling environments for young women to get into those science and tech spaces. So if we can start expanding those opportunities, if we can start expanding those enabling environments to get to all these spaces where there aren't a lot of opportunities. And I mean, and that can only be done in partnership with large corporate companies. If we start having access to internet within rural areas, young people may get access to internet and be able to connect to the world, connect to opportunities, because when people do not get access to seeing all these opportunities, when people do not get access to watching these conferences that we are part of, especially young women not being able to access these conferences that we are part of, they never get the opportunity of inspiration. They never see the global game changers that are part of this panel that they can aspire to be, learn from their journey, and map ways on how to get to where we are.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Neela, for your time and for those inspiring words. And again, can't wait to hear more from you later on in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In Time's 100 Most Influential list of 2014, Mr. Arunachalam Muruganantham is the founder, Jayashri Industries, where he invested industrial machinery that produces low-cost sanitary pads, thus making them accessible to millions of Indian women who otherwise could not afford them. Based on this model, dozens of industrial units have been mounted in multiple rural locations in India, where they are used to manufacture sanitary pads and promote female hygiene and practices. This process has also provided employment to local women in rural areas. As a matter of fact, a short film about the incredible impact of this project on hygiene and women empowerment in India won an Academy Award in 2019. I give you, please, our next guest. He is Arunachalam Muruganantham. Welcome.
So everything I started from my wife, now it is gone global. Please, gentlemen, those who are hearing this, you want to become fame, you want to achieve many things, please try to do something for your wife. Definitely you also become fame like me. Really, it's true, because on my early marriages, almost 23 years ago. So, you know, being a newly married, what is your important job? No matter you are a president of United States or any country, the moment you are a newly married couple, the important job is impressing the new wife. So being a new husband, I try to impress my new wife by offering 5 rupees a plastic pendant or 10 rupees plastic bangle. So this way I tried. So one day I saw my wife carrying something behind her. The purpose is to hide me. I thought my new wife is playing with me. Then I ran away behind her. I saw a nasty rag cloth with blood stain. I don't even use the cloth to clean my scooter. Then I found, oh my God, she is adopting this unhygiene method to manage her period days. See that, or menstruation period. That word which I am pronouncing today, it is a sin. It is a taboo for hundreds of nations, not in my country. So nobody ever talked about menstruation period in my country, many developing nations, because it is a taboo. They kept for centuries. Even, you know, slaverism is addressed, many universal problem addressed in 16th, 17th, 18th century. This problem never addressed for centuries. You can note it down. Then I asked her why you are not adopting. There is some product, even I don't know the term, called tampon or sanitary pad. She replied, I also watching TV, the advertisement, but myself, your sister, other women at our family start using, then we have to cut our family milk budget, she replied. Then I got a shock. What is the connection between using a sanitary pad and not buying some milk for the family? Then understood it is a matter of affordability. Then what I did on a day, the entire story came, you know, I don't have any idea, become a social entrepreneur, this, that. I thought on a particular day, again I got a chance, why not offer a sanitary pad packet to my new wife? Then I took my cycle, I ride my cycle from my village almost 50 kilometers away to the city. I bought a sanitary pad packet almost for $2 a packet. Then I hand over to my wife. The moment she saw the price of the pad, she shouted at me, you give back to the shop, we can buy 5 kilograms of rice, we can buy 10 liters of milk, why you buy this? Then the shopkeeper never returned it, because once you buy, you cannot return to the shop. Then I kept in my small workshop. I'm a school dropout. I'm running a small workshop with a welding workshop. Then I accidentally opened the packet. Very first time I'm taking the sanitary pad from the packet. It is a 8-inch length, white substance like a bandage. Then being a welder, my background is, my father is a handloom weaver. We used to make saris in cotton. That's why the white substance is cotton inside the pad, maybe weighing around 10 grams. 10 gram cotton raw material cost in 1998 is 10 cents, but I bought the pad for dollars. That's what I got a hunch. Why not try to make an affordable pad for my brand new wife? This is what I started everything. Then I decided, I made a sanitary pad in 2 days with the local cotton I bought. But where can I check? So if I want to do something in industrial research, very well I can do it in my small house shop. Now I entered into women personal hygiene, a secret domain. I made sanitary pads. The only available choice or victim the volunteer got is my wife. Then I hand over the napkin to my wife, like giving a chocolate. I ask him the feedback. Use it and give the feedback. Even I don't know the cycle when it is happening. Because I'm a very clever person, I thought women are getting periods every Friday. That's what I selected, very good Friday to hand over the napkins, which I made. I'm asking feedback. She laughed. You have to wait for a month. Then only I came to know, oh my God, it is happening monthly once. Then on a particular day, she used the napkin. She gave a very bad, the feedback. What napkin you gave it to me? It is very worst. I can go back to my rack cloth using with that. Then the real research started. I tried to make different cotton napkins. Then I needed more women volunteers. I catch my younger sisters. But while I'm telling you, don't take it a very simple way. It is not Los Angeles or Tokyo or German. It is typical India in a typical village. Nobody ever talked with the women about their personal hygiene. They will cut your throat. That's what even talking with my own sisters, they become, they shocked. Oh my God, the brother is talking about menstruation of the sister. They will turn to the wall. I will get always feedback. The women used to turn the wall to the face. I can only see the back. This way I will get the feedback. So I'm unable to get the feedback. Why I'm telling this, it is very important. You want to be a social impact company or a social entrepreneur, the very first beginning is you must create your product on a co-creation basis with society. See here, I am trying to do something for women. From the day one, I am trying, coordinating with women, I am trying to make what they want, not in my company lab, with only greedy mind of the profit. So this way the co-creation, unknowingly did. But no woman is ready. It's forced me to wear a sanitary pad in my underwear. But even I wore a sanitary pad in my underwear, where can I go for uterus? I made an artificial uterus in a football bladder. I filled animal blood in it. I tied on my hip. There is a tube connection to the bladder and the napkin. While I'm walking and cycling, I made a small press. A dosage of blood will go to the napkin. So this way I checked, my God, while I'm doing it, there's a blood stain on my cloth. Something is happening around me. The whole village, they thought I'm becoming a pervert. I'm becoming a vampire in the evening, drinking girls' blood. That's what they want to chase out from the village. Then if I caught them, then they will kill me. Then I ran away from my village. But even whom I tried to help, my wife, she got a misunderstanding. I am trying to use the research to run behind many girls and women. She sent a divorce notice. She also separated. Then one point of time, at the maximum time of research, I tried to collect used tampons of the girls, the sanitary pad of women. I'm all displaying in my home. I'm testing what happened to my napkin and company napkin. One fine day, my mother come back. She thought I'm cleaning chicken to eat on Sunday. The moment come and see the substance used by the other woman, she cried like anything. She told the same. Somebody did on my son. He became totally mad. She also left. So why? Because later I visited Europe and US, where I found men used to collect brassiere panties of women. My mother, she think like that. I become like that. But why it becomes so tough? The domain which I took, it is meant for multi-transnational from Second World War. They only dominated or monopolized the women personal hygiene industry. So unknowingly, a school dropout entered into my nose. But I'm dying to know the secret of the raw material, everything. Then it took 2.5 years to understand that raw material secret, like a Da Vinci Code. Even after that, you need a multi-million-dollar plant. Then I worked for 4.5 years. I made a simple machine. You note it down. Purposely made into simple, because now everybody, you're coming out from MIT, Harvard, Oxford. Because you're educated, nobody want to make anything simple. Because if you make anything simple, the world think you become a simple man, illiterate. Not like that. If you are really a clever and intelligent guy, you have to deliver a simple product to the world. There is a problem in the society, means your solution to be a simple solution, not giving another problem to your problem. So after making the machine, I sent the machine for evaluation purpose, like MIT, like institute in my country, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, where the English which I'm speaking only from 2009 December. Earlier I used to pick up the word from here and there. It will take a longer time. Now I'm able to manage with English. The problem is the engineers, they agreed I did the innovation, but they are unable to conceive in what way I am going to use the machine. They are thinking only about the big multinational corporations, how this guy is going to compete with a simple machine. But my mind having a total different idea. Then so many times being a social entrepreneur or something, you are unable to, convince your venture capitalist or anyone or impact investor. Don't try to convince that. You just the practical result, what it can give the impact, then they will shut their mouth. That's why I took the machine from the Indian Institute of Technology, not back to my state, my city. From there, I took to Nepal border in a small village where I set up. It is a remarkable thing happened. That is a world first micro and decentralized sanitary pad manufacturing industry I start. Up to that, from the Second World War, this is the industry is macro and centralized model. That is with all costs are shoot up. Now the world first micro and decentralized sanitary pad method is happening. The women used to train, especially illiterate women, poverty-ridden women, the poverty-ridden school girls, they're making sanitary pad. Then while I'm working for years, I found the data in my country on 2006, not even 10% women are using sanitary towel. But by seeing advertisement, there is a presence of multinational, because this is true, many countries, they don't know there is a problem in the country because nobody is taught. That does not mean there is not problem of the particular area. So like that, the menstrual hygiene problem, it is not big up to 2006. Very first time I'm telling in front of top brass officials and big ministers in Delhi, I hope only 10% women are using sanitary pad. It is very difficult to achieve 2-digit GDP growth. See, I'm connecting women menstruation with the country GDP.
Absolutely, a great and a very useful connection. Thank you so much, Mr. Muruganantham, for that amazing story and taking us on that journey with you and your business model and where you are, and absolutely cannot wait to hear more later on. Thank you so much. All right, now we are going to introduce our next guest. He is Mr. Jens Holstein, CFO of Bion. Hello, Jens. Where are you calling us from?
Hi, Anna Maria. I'm calling you from Germany, and if I may say, it's a great pleasure and honor to be with you today with this panel.
So Bion, Jens, is the pioneering biotech company that in 2020 partnered with Pfizer for testing logistics, developing the RNA vaccine for COVID-19 infections. So another company that's really been in the news quite a bit. Now, Bion develops pharmaceutical candidates for use as individualized cancer immunotherapies, as vaccines against infectious diseases, and as protein replacement therapies for rare diseases, among others. Now, as we said, over the past year, it's become one of the most famous companies worldwide, and the revolutionary vaccine technology has reached millions of people and given us all hope for a return to a life in which we can all safely stay close together and hopefully in the future celebrate this summit in person. Now, what was the role of government in supporting achieving this game-changing breakthrough, and what more can be done to ensure that the vaccine reaches the poorest countries?
Good question, Anna Maria. And I mean, there were governments that were supporting us, but of course, not only the governments. There have been scientists, not only within the company, but to a great extent also external scientists that supported us on the way. Governments, regulatory authorities, not to forget, companies, third-party companies that we work with, to make the impossible possible at the end of the day, because I mean, it hasn't been seen that a company has developed compound, a vaccine from scratch within less than a year to get it to approval, with a technology that was unproven at that point in time, so to say. So maybe a few examples of what governments and authorities really helped us with, because that's once in a while, it's just not highlighted enough. And therefore, I think the question is a very fair and good one, because regulatory authorities, we have to say, worked day and night to really support us in accelerating the development and the approval process at their end, reviewing the data, reviewing the documents that we filed, immediately upon submission. So thus minimizing really the administrative waiting periods that you normally have to face. And another example is, for example, regional and national authorities that prioritize the approval of our site in Marburg, which is one of the largest mRNA production facilities in the world. And they were really incredibly quick in doing so. So I think we since then have actively working with governments around the world, with global health partners, to work towards fair and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines. So that's maybe not known, we're delivering around 40% of this year's production capacity to low and middle income countries. By the end of next year, we plan to have delivered 2 billion doses to low income countries. For this year, the goal is around 1 billion. We delivered already more than 519 million doses by October the 10th, as that's the date of that number. So we've really done a lot and got a lot of support from governments and regulatory authorities to really be able to do that. We conducted numerous technology transfers to dramatically increase the production. I think we have been one with Pfizer that really increased the production capacity to 3 billion, estimated 3 billion doses by end of this year. So we increased significantly towards what we originally planned to be able to produce. So overall, I think this continued expansion of manufacturing capabilities, leverage GMP certified sites and experienced manufacturers will help to end the pandemic by ensuring really a supply worldwide with safe and effective vaccines.
You're so right in the sense that, you know, in so little time, these vaccines came to market, really just proof of what can be done when the need and the pressure is there, right?
Yes, it's absolutely the case. I mean, normally you wait around a year until you get a compound. When you have filed documents with the regulatory authorities, you have to wait around about a year to get an approval. And once in a while it goes a bit quicker, but it's something like, you know, it takes always 4 or 6 months minimum, and you know, in very fast cases. In here, you know, it took weeks, and so to the benefit of governments and regulatory authorities, they supported this. It wasn't the money; it was more the administrative support that helped us bringing the compound to the market that quickly.
Now, if we look specifically at the mRNA technology, it's been defined as transformational. Can you tell us more in layman's terms on its future avenues of application and how it can open the doors to new types of vaccines for other infectious diseases?
Yeah, of course, and I'm the CFO, Anna Maria, so don't worry about, you know, too technical explanations. You know, our goal has been always to provide the best possible medicines to patients. That has been our vision, and you know, we wanted to harness the full potential of the immune system. And mRNA has been one of the technologies that we have developed over time since the inception of the company in 2008. And you know, the founders and many of the team members that have been so instrumental to develop Comirnaty, they developed and optimized the technology for more than 2 decades. So it hasn't been something that took place in a year's time. All this work in advance really was the foundation to be able to be that quick. And the company really has been inspiring for the people working during that time period, but also for the ones that we since then hired. We feel that mRNA is a very, very extremely versatile technology that allows to act in various fields. You mentioned the individualized cancer therapies, for example. In infectious diseases, it's used to provide the immune system with a profile of the desired target, as we know from Comirnaty. So, you know, there are other fields that we are working in where we try to really tell the body what the enemy looks like and how the immune system can be best defend itself against it, whether it's a virus or a parasite. So there are various ways we have announced in summer that we tackle malaria, that we want to support the African continent by tackling malaria, TBC, and also HIV. So we are looking to we're evaluating at this point in time production facilities on the African continent to support the continent with production sites that are located there. So there are a lot of things where we believe with the mRNA technology and the various approaches that this technology gives to also other indications, we should do something for the African continent independent of what the money says. Yeah, it's not about the money. It has never been about the money when we started to work on Comirnaty. It just came with it.
All right, so obviously lots to look forward to coming from BioNTech. Thank you, Jens, for that.
Thanks very much, Anna Maria. Thank you.
All right, and as we wrap up our guests, the introduction of our guests today, when we think about how many people, millions and billions of people will be living in cities by 2050, for example, 68% of the world population will be living in urban areas. Companies like this next one will really have a very important role to play, already playing, but even more so in the future. I'm talking about Alstom. I'd like to introduce Mr. Andrew De Leone, President of Africa, Middle East, and Central Asia for Alstom. Welcome, Andrew.
Anna Maria, great to be here. What a panel.
I know, right? That's what I've been thinking the whole time. I feel like a very much an underachiever every time I hear somebody speak. Now, where are you calling us from, Andrew?
I'm not too far from you and Christoph. I'm actually in Zug, Switzerland today, a place I am very, very, very infrequently, but I do enjoy to call home.
Okay, lovely. So the same time zone anyway. So good after almost evening to you. All right, so as we talk about the future of cities, for example, Alstom develops mobility solutions that provide sustainable foundations for the future of transportation. So product portfolio ranges from high-speed trains to metros, monorail, trams, integrated systems, customized services, infrastructure, signaling, and digital mobility solutions. Now, sustainable transportation, Andrew, it's based on clean energy technologies. So such as the rail hydrogen mobility solutions your company's been developing, they're going to be fundamental to respond to the challenges posed by climate change. What are the current hurdles to a wider expansion and development of sustainable transportation?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Anna Maria. I'd say first, let's start with some context. I'd say mobility to begin with is not going anywhere. If anything, it's increasing. Mobility is an absolute necessity for economic inclusivity, for prosperity. And just when you look, especially in the parts of the world where I spend my time, nearly 1 billion people still don't live very close to an all-weather road. Okay, you see nearly 20% of women don't look for jobs out of fear of harassment in transit. So mobility is just extremely relevant to what we've been talking about today and is a necessity. And I'd say secondly, when we think about sustainability, it's just highly relevant to the world achieving our joint and mutual sustainability goals. So transportation, I think by almost all estimates, represents about a quarter of the world's total emissions, and it's growing. Even without renewable energy sources, we'll talk more about that, rail is clearly the most energy efficient mode of transportation. So 10 times less CO2 intensive than an airplane, 5 times less CO2 intensive than a car. And the technology will only get better. So it's clearly a bright future. And I'd say at Alstom, and really our mission is to really set rail on a pathway to be an emissions-free technology, whether that's hydrogen, whether that's batteries. There's going to be different solutions for different challenges, but we need to be on a pathway for emissions-free technology. So you talked about hurdles. What are the hurdles, especially in, let's say, the emerging world? But I think they apply globally. And maybe I'll highlight 3. So I'd say first is investment in, broadly speaking, the planning of investment. Railway and generally speaking, public transport in general have absolutely not developed at the same pace that the world is urbanized. So you take a look at Africa, highest urbanization rate in the world, Absolutely not the same type of rate of public transport and railway infrastructure development. And part of that is because, large part of that is rail is seen to have a high initial investment. Okay, so we have to overcome that, and I think it's worth us diving more into that. And through that investment, there's a high need for financing solutions. So we have to figure out a way not only to plan well, not only have a belief of the investment, we need to secure the financing. Secondly is social and I'd say economic hurdles. So first, and maybe you can tell by my accent, I happen to be American. And I would say even where I'm from, the perception of the use of private cars is very much tied to your social status. We see that as well across the Middle East and a number of parts of the region of which I have the good fortune to lead today. But it's difficult oftentimes to get people to switch to public transportation. And it's not seen as something to aspire to, which is very different than say the country which I live here in Switzerland. And then I'd say secondly the environmental conditions of our region, high temperatures, makes, I would say, the last mile connectivity to public transport challenging. Walking, biking, not the norm, oftentimes and not necessarily desired. So we have to figure out solutions to and from stations. And I'd say lastly and thirdly is maybe this idea of system thinking. So we're doing a lot of work around hydrogen. And it's an incredible fuel for the future. And you see the cost cycle come down and what it can do for areas where we don't have electrification. But you need a full system for it to work. It's not just a train. You need the infrastructure, you need fueling stations, you need distribution. And it's when we think about infrastructure investment, we have to think as a system, not piece by piece.
I really want to get into those hurdles, and perhaps we can do that as soon as we're done with your part of the presentation. But before we do that, I mean, you alluded to this, but how will the future of sustainable transportation look? I mean, and how can developing countries really participate from the start in this new mobility revolution?
So I think globally speaking, what's the future going to look like tomorrow mobility? It's going to be much more collective. So we need seamless interfaces between different types of mobility. Today, it's very clunky. You don't have connected systems. You don't have connected stations. It's not easy to get around in many parts of the world. It needs to be much easier, and it needs to be collective and intermodal. It needs to be much more rider-centric. I mean, the beauty of train travel and rail travel in general is that it should be highly productive for a passenger. You're not driving a car. You're not boarding an airplane. Journeys should be faster. They should be a lot more comfortable. And they should be more reliable. So we should be more punctual and certainly greener. And my fellow panelists have covered this so well, but we need even better technology to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for mobility. And the good news is those exist. They're not, I'd say, dreams, they're real. So if you take that, Anna Maria, what does it mean for kind of developing countries? I think it's two parts. First, we need a local, I'd say local stroke national sense of urgency to accelerate the rate of progress, okay? And I think that means starting where you are. I think progress is progress, and we need to see that via a local lens. Regardless of the fuel source, regardless of the medium, rail mobility for a community is a step in the right direction. And what you see is many countries and many networks have existing railway networks that are not used. The first step, rehabilitate them. Use them. If you don't have one, I'm going to give you an example of a place that does, that's doing a real rehabilitation effort. Start with high density areas where you can make the highest impact for the most number of people. And where you have existing networks, sometimes consider starting with secondhand trains. If you want to get something done fast and relatively inexpensively while you're planning your next steps in growth, think about small steps. I think Nairobi, a place that I once lived, is a good example of this. There's an existing unused network that's built decades ago. The city wants to start relieving congestion. If you've been to Nairobi, you know there's a decent amount of traffic congestion. So broadly speaking, the city and the country found secondhand rolling stock in Spain with their same gauge that they could put on the line and start moving people. You get people interested in the mode of transportation, and it gives you a basis to grow and expand into electrification, different types of fuels and the like, but at least you get started. The other thing we know is that access to electricity is difficult in a lot of emerging markets. I had the opportunity to live in India for several years, and we know there's certain markets. Electricity is not a given in many parts of the world where a lot of people live. So I would say diesel, which is a fuel that is not a popular fuel, but diesel trains are still better than not having a public transport solution at all. Inside of Africa, Middle East, and Central Asia, we have about 150,000 kilometers of a rail network. Less than 20% is electrified. By the way, even in Europe, only 50% is electrified. So ultimately, we would love to take those non-electrified lines, deploy hydrogen technology, which we think makes an enormous amount of sense. And even in some places, let's say, for instance, in South Africa, where you see a lot of theft around the wayside of rail networks, hydrogen networks will do a tremendous work to reduce that. But we need to start. And we need to start by making rail more of a day-to-day existence. And I'd say, secondly, Anna-Marie, just to wrap up very quickly, internationally, so that's the local element. Internationally, we need the will to provide financing to make that happening. It needs to be fair. They need to be fair structures. I think they need to include discounts, what I'll call a climate bonus for installation of infrastructure programs that are going to move the needle in climate change. And then they need to be loans. I'm a big believer of this, and as a company, we're a big believer of this. They need to be, financing structures that can enable job creation and economic development in these countries, which is essential to a lot of the objectives that we have in this World Investment Forum of bringing more and more people into a productive, financially secure lifestyle. So it's a local will, it's a local approach, but we need the international community.
And thank you so much, Andrew. And really such a great lead into now just opening up the discussion to all of the participants here today. And going back to this question of this investment, right? Investment being a hurdle, one of the hurdles that you mentioned. And now you've brought up all of these different ways that this could potentially work. Talk to me more about this. You said that you wanted to dive deeper into the investment hurdle. Is there anything you wanted to add after what you just said, or?
Well, I'd say, look, I think that the challenges in the world economic system, and especially around climate and sustainability, it doesn't matter if you're talking in Paris, France, you're talking in Nairobi, Kenya, or you're talking in Cairo in Egypt. It has the same impact from a climate standpoint. So as national governments who are doing incredible work to transform, let's say, their CO2 intensity in domestic markets. A lot of these countries are blessed with fantastic export credit and financial networks to help fuel projects around the world. And we see a lot, certainly in Alstom, partnering with the French Treasury. We do the same thing with the UK Export Finance in the United Kingdom, for example, about enabling attractive financing protocols for emerging markets to invest in clean infrastructure projects. You see different rates in terms of interest, in terms of payback period, in terms of content needed to make those projects happen. And I think that we need more, I would say, of the world's richest economies to set up investment programs that they've successfully done and drive those more into emerging markets with preferential terms so these projects happen. Because the climate impact is the same. We live in the same climate.
That's right. That's absolutely right. How does that, if I may, Jack, how does that resonate with you? Do you feel like you're moving along, thinking along the same lines? I think you're unmuted.
Sorry, you are asking.
Hi. Hello. No, I just wanted to know how that resonated with you. The idea of overcoming these investment hurdles.
Oh, so
or maybe a better question would be, how do you perceive these hurdles in terms of investments, and how do you overcome them?
You're asking me, Jack, Sim? Yes.
Yes.
A
question, and just before you begin, Jack, for any of you, if you please feel free to jump in. You can use the raising the hand function, or you can just jump in. But please go ahead, Jack.
I think that the train system would actually suit America very well, but the lobbies, that is a kind of like a legal corruption system, is going to help the oil company, the cars, the airplanes, and so trains don't get a very good chance. So some of these obstacles are actually about major company interests. And unfortunately, some of them are even legal. And so these are very, very illogical things. It's also linked to political election funding and all these things. So I think that when we want a better world, we have to price the externality of both negative and positive. And if we were to be able to balance all of it, we'll do the right thing. But democracy, election system, they are so short cycle. So all the politicians are trying their best to kind of win the next 4 years and plan the next 4 or 5 years. So I think those are the major investment horizon problem. If we were to think in long term, adapt it in short term, we will definitely be able to do the right thing. But the way election cycles are so short and fake news and the narratives are not honest anymore, I think this is the problem.
Somebody want to speak? Okay. Mariana, if I may, what kind of innovative market incentives could help companies and entrepreneurs relying on the technologies of the new industrial revolution to thrive in their respective sectors? What do you see? What could
the beginning? Like it's cut at the beginning of your sentence before the technologies that can thrive in respective sectors.
No problem. The joys of the virtual world. So what kind of innovative market incentives do you see from where you're at could help companies, yours, for example, and entrepreneurs that rely on these technologies of the new industrial revolution thrive in their respective sectors?
Right. So I think there is two parts of the answer to this question. The first one is to establish a risk capital, right? So like there is a need for incentives and legislation for venture capitals and angel investors in different markets. And many developing countries, that's not structured yet. So I came from Paraguay, for example, a few weeks ago, and I met the guy who's structuring the first venture capital fund there. So if there is no incentives in terms of capital returns or having a safe legal environment where people can make riskier investments in innovators, that's not going to thrive. So that's the difference between Silicon Valley and Israel and the rest of the world, like is to create a good system where people feel safe to risk their capital and look for higher returns. So, and that has a lot to do with capital returns and appropriation of capital. So many investors are still concerned, and depending on the country they are in, they won't be able to bring back that money and this kind of things. So that's one part that I think like it's an important incentive for fostering the development of new technologies. In the second part, I would go to the financing of nature-based solutions and green finance. I think that's a great opportunity. So like, I'm sure Christoph have better inputs than me on this, but like the regulation of the carbon markets coming from the clause 6 of the Paris Agreement that is supposed to be discussed in this COP in Glasgow next month, it's essential because when we have like a carbon market that is regulated, we find a way to monetize or to capture value of sustainable practices. And that can be used to pay back farmers, that can pay back technology, for example, in our sector. The same thing with the green bonds. So once we find ways to finance and to create financial instruments to reward people who are adopting sustainable practice, I think we have a motor, an engine that starts to work. So we need to create more of these. Like there is also opportunities, for example, of water being tokenized, right? So if we successfully make it with carbon, then we can move to other elements of sustainability, of renewable energy. We also see like developments in there, but we need legislation and safe environment so these could thrive.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, Christoph.
Sure. Well, first, let me just reconfirm what Andrew said and also what Mariana said. So first, with the only talking of one of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is CO2, right? Now, Andrew said it's a global problem, and if we reduce CO2 somewhere, this has a global impact. Exactly, that is true, right? If we are capturing CO2 in Iceland or in some other part of the world, this will have a global impact just within a couple of days because mixing of CO2 is happening so fast. In such, I can only reconfirm what Andrew said. And the second thing, what Mariana said, I also can reconfirm that a venture capital scene, so to say, clearly helps to kick off innovation, and actually is much needed for innovation. At the end of the day, the way when we started out, there was no such thing as funding, and also venture capitalists turned their back when we pitched to them. At the end of the day, what comes with funding sources is time, right? The more funding sources you have, the faster you are. I think, like listening to all of you, everyone will find their funding sources, but it might take simply too long until we get there, and such those environments are needed. Now, the last point I wanted to share is why should we think about creating an investment vehicle, like either on the public or on the private side for what all of us have discussed. At the end of the day, what the world will be in a very substantial transition in the next 30 years. We have to transition from currently 40 or 50 billion tons of annual emissions down to net zero emissions. Again, like only talking about CO2. And that's a quite huge challenge. And also in terms of economic value, that's a huge thing. Like in my answer I gave to you, Anna Maria, in the beginning, I mentioned that the size of our challenge of CO2 removal is 2 to 20 billion tons annually. If you multiply that with $200 per ton of CO2, that's a 400 to 4 trillion industry in 30 years to come. $4 trillion, if we take the upper limit, is a huge industry. That's like the 50 largest oil and gas companies combined, or that's the complete tech sector. And that only needs to happen within the next 30 years. So economically and from a scale-up perspective, that's a huge step that has to be done. And why should it be done? Because exactly that offers also a completely new asset class. Like we have to divest from one class of investment and invest into a new class of investment. But currently, those new classes of investments might not be there. And in such, those new technologies and new approaches also offer a new asset class, so to say, where you can generate return on investment at the same time do good and remove CO2 from the air. Those are my 5 cents. I think you're muted, Anna Maria.
Was bound to happen. Haruna Chalam, I think you have your hand up.
No, I'm here. Yeah.
Yes. Did you have your hand up? Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I told now. So the problem with the innovation, something Andrew, everybody talking, the innovation scenario, the likeness among public become minimal. So all the breakthrough innovation happens only in 18th century and 19th century beginning. So then, it stopped. Only incremental innovations are happening. So I'm talking about, James Watt innovated the steam engine, electricity, everything. This is called breakthrough innovation. So you check all this, what happened in the last century, it's all, is incremental. This what everything, the hydrogen engine, everything is taught, it should be liked by the common man. The respective country people, they have to demand, I want Andre engine here. Then what the government will do? So we have to create awareness on liking innovation in the universities, in schools, everywhere. Then once the particular country, the people, citizens are hearing about Andrew engine, then they will ask with the banner, give Andrew engine here, cut down CO2. Then what that people will, once it's welcomed by citizen, all the investors will queue up behind the Andrew. This is what I'm thinking. That the likeness on innovation should increase by changing that the studying system in Harvard everywhere. So education is not to just survive; it's to innovate. So last century it's happened only become a CEO of a big company and making their own life into cakewalk. Not like that. They can be innovators. They can be a change maker. So we have to bring back that ecosystem into the universities like MIT again. So then automatically Andrew, like all the CO2 into rock, it is mind-boggling. Even I can't sleep, this night, CO2 becoming a rock. So beautiful. So just now I'm hearing. So this should be go to every classroom. This is the person in New Zealand is doing, is converting the CO2 into rock. Then think about it. So this should be a talk of that international citizens. Then automatically they no need to go to knock any door. People will come and knock their doors.
All right. Jack, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say, since we're in the World Investment Forum, it's very strange that half of the world population, almost 4 billion people, are outside our formal economy. And everything the businesses are doing are mostly engaging only the top half of human population. It's crazy. How can you keep half of all your customers outside your shop, right? And these are a lot of companies are looking at them as if they are unprofitable customers because they're looking at very short term. But if you look at countries like China, in 1986, it was also unprofitable customer, but people start investing in it, and look, now they are profitable customers. So the base of the pyramid is also the same. All the poor people, they should not be treated as charity cases. They should not be treated like people who need donation, useless, hopeless, helpless, dependent on donation. Don't look at them that way. Look at them as potential customer. Look at them as hardworking, hungry, entrepreneurial, and fast learner. And if we were to invest in them, then I think the world will become fairer. Otherwise, we get all these rich people taking rockets, 6 people at a time, burning so much fuel, $300,000 per ticket just for like 20 minutes of weightlessness. And I think this is all crazy, Let's look at the world circumspect and be more humane. Yeah, over to you, Jens.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I'm very happy that you said this. I mean, the panel represents various approaches to make this the world better, yeah? and to help the poorest on the planet. And there are a few hurdles that we all have to overcome to fight the fight against hunger. Education is a huge issue. Health is a huge issue. Of course, there are multiple things. Yeah, wars and legal systems. You can have a very long list. But I'm with Jack. The glass gotta be. It's for me always half full. It's not half empty. And if you have that view, then you can make something out of it. And investing in for example, Africa from us as a company, has something to do with responsibility too. It has a positive implication on the development of the continent and the countries there. And therefore, from our perspective, investing in malaria has never been a question of making money. Yeah, that was never the intention to invest in that field and to take money in our hands, to help 200 million people that are infected by malaria per annum. Yeah? We do it because we believe, we got to do something for the continent, and we think there is a positive potential implication in the years to come. If it's not coming. But we still have, the responsibility as a company and as nations to help the poorest on this planet. We help ourselves with it, by the way, as well.
Go ahead, Mariana.
Well, I would like to add first what Jens mentioned about the social responsibility within the investment. And I think that's where we look to the whole ESG trend, right? I don't think that any investment at all should be done without considering ESG. So I think we need to catalyze the capital in the right direction, right? So that shouldn't be one thing or another. We should be looking on how to evolve and how to grow economically. At the same time, we bring impact and we are taking care of our environment, our people, and our community. So I think that's very important. And I really like Jack's perspective on seeing the customers and the impact as an opportunity, because in the end we are creating future markets that will generate growth. So I really like that perspective because I see that with smallholder farmers as well. So there's many projects and grants that want to support them into a subsistence agriculture, when I actually think we should evolve everyone to be an entrepreneur. Every agriculture should be an agricultural business. The smallholder farm should see it as a business. And what we have to do is to empower them with infrastructure, with financial access, and with technology so they can grow their business. So I don't want the smallholder farmer to continue to be a smallholder farmer. So they will forever depend on that assistantialism mechanism. I want them to grow. I want them to understand the opportunity that there is to capture value together with consumer, creating direct access, or with the environmental service marketing, capturing carbon and commercializing that. So I think that's a very important perspective that gives everyone so you can invest. You don't have just to donate money. You don't have just to do things. You can impact people and create a business at the same time. And I think that has to be a mindset for everyone.
Thank you so much for that. I've got a question that's coming from the audience, which is, I think you have all touched on this a little bit in your comments, but what needs to be done by governments to facilitate investment in innovative solutions? What is your view as game changers of the role of governments in this process? Who wants to take that first? Get in there, Mariana.
I will start with a very polemic answer and then people can add. I would say, first of all, do not get in the middle of companies trying to raise investment. So as a Brazilian startup, I face a lot of challenge regarding governance, right? So actually I have to first prove Latin America, and that Latin America is not a chaos, that there is actually lots of opportunities and lots of good things going on. Then I have to prove Brazil, right? That we know we are not destroying the Amazon forest as you see in the TV, and that's not all we do. No, our politicians are not just that corruption that you see on TV. It's just so hard to build the image of the region and the country that we have way more work to then be able to talk about my business and why my business is good. So I think that's the first thing that governments should be really looking at. How do we create image? How do we communicate better? Because every country or every state and every city has problems, right? That's part of being the humanity. But how do we give attention and we focus and we learn how to communicate the good things? And to the problems, how do we solve it? I love the half full glass perspective that Jens brought, and I think that should be approached. and then like really look on how to, when you create a new policy, how do you embed technology? I have been to the COP25 in Madrid 2 years ago, and I just was shocked on how all of the conversation and dialogue around policy didn't include technology at all. And we are going through a digital transformation. There is no way we can tackle any issue, if it's health, if it's climate, or anything, it is education, without considering technology at the core of the solution to it. So like, I think connecting the dots between the different areas and understanding that, and then creating the mechanism to invest and include, like I mentioned before, the technology in the public policy, I think it's a way to start that path.
Go ahead, Nile.
Yeah, I was just trying to respond to the question on how government can start uplifting investment into innovation. I think the biggest role of government, more to say, is not to become the funder of innovation. I truly believe that a lot of governments in so many parts of the world might not have that deep pockets to be able to fund that. But I truly believe that the biggest role of government is to create an enabling environment by putting policies, or probably relaxing a lot of regulations that enable private sector or family offices to be able to invest in innovation. You know, I always look at how difficult it is for any investor to invest in South Africa, my home country, whereas it's different from in the US, having started companies in 2 different countries, how difficult it was in South Africa having to get outside investment, how difficult it was having to establish global partnerships being in South Africa. So I think government needs to, their first job is to start building policies, or probably relaxing the policies that enable global investment, making it easy for foreign investment to come into different countries, especially on the African continent, where there is a huge need for investment to drive innovation, to drive development. We need to start building an environment that enables that. We need to start making our currencies quite stable, so that investment into our countries can be more beneficial. We need to start making our financial institutions more stable. We need to probably give some of our financial institutions some independence, so they should not be controlled by one of political leaders coughing, and it actually influences our financial institutions. So if we can get that right, it would then be easier for us to drive investment, to build innovation, because if we just put it in the hands of government, I don't truly believe that in emerging markets, a lot of governments can have the muscle to drive innovation.
So to all of you, does the private sector, Andrew's got his hand up. Go ahead and answer, Andrew.
Yeah, I'd say, just one other comment I want to make specifically on that point. We have to be able to look at, governments can really help create conditions for investment that I think really do make a difference. And especially when you think about innovation and something new. If we're going to hopefully build a new metro line with several partners in Abidjan, in Cote d'Ivoire. That metro line is not going to pay for itself with ticket revenue. There's no public transportation that pays for itself with ticket revenue. That's not the point. It has so much economic and social benefit way beyond the system itself. So, and I think that's a very small example, but so many of my fellow panelists would say in their particular domain that doing X, yes, the X itself creates a defined benefit within its perimeter, but there's so much periphery impact. And I think we need to be much better storytellers, and governments need to be much better storytellers about what that will do, more broadly speaking, for that city, for that country, for that local community. And you can quantify those things. These are not, they're not soft topics, they're quantifiable topics. And it makes an investment case completely different. And we just have to be much, much better at that to help governments do that.
Take it, Jack.
Yeah, I totally agree with Andrew. You see, storytelling needs also to be backed up by universities' studies to quantify the negative externality, the positive externality. So the public good part of it is very often miscalculated by the private investor. For example, if you want to invest in a toilet, then you say, oh, a toilet business doesn't make much money, not a lot of people are buying. But if you were to have a lot of people having sanitation, hygiene, safety, then you realize that the workforce of the country become very productive and you actually get out of poverty. Japan invests 2% of the GDP in cleaning up their water and sewage and hygiene, and then they grow out of poverty. Singapore, the same. If you don't calculate the entire benefit, but you only calculate the private profit part, you miss a lot of big pictures. So I think that if companies take a longer view, and nowadays there's a lot of this CSR, sustainability reporting, I hope that this sustainability reporting are all getting more serious, not greenwashing, not just cheap advertisement, but seriously the culture of the company. And those companies who do it like that, I think they have long staying power. They can grow relationship with people because public good have to be priced. And where the private sector can take a role, then the public good actually pays them back eventually. Look at Volkswagen going to China in the early days and then become such a big profit for their company. So I'm very happy to hear BioNTech doing this and Alstom. I think these are maturity and positive sign of going forward. Yeah.
And actually, to your point, I have a question for Andrew, which says, even within a European country, areas with less population density are left behind in the railway system upgrades because they don't drive enough votes to justify public government investment. They have huge potential in circular green economy, though. So what pitch would you give to national politicians on this?
That's a great question, but you know, we went through this. I think this cycle. I mean, I lived this growing up. I mean, you live this cycle in far-flung airports in the U.S. that are heavy cash trains, and so much subsidies go to fly small regional airlines. We do see this in parts of Europe as well, non-electrified, non-connected lines. In reality, though, we know that when you start to connect communities and connect places, economic growth and things that maybe we don't expect happens. We're building just to give you an example, and it's not that it's not densified, but to give you, in India, we're building the first rapid rail system around kind of the capital district around Delhi. This system will kind of a modal system will go at 100+ kilometers in multiple directions. Okay, what's going to happen when this system is in place is that businesses and kind of micro economies are going to get built around that railway line. That will spawn itself from an investment like that. The same thing has the potential to happen in Europe. And by the way, the idea of urbanization, I don't think is a threat. Urbanization will persist, but we have seen during the pandemic that people do like to shift a bit their premises of where they live, where they operate. And I would say deeper railway connections to today places that are not so densified can create opportunities that we may not notice. That's not just in terms of land value or business value, but of kind of economic spurious activity, which can and will happen.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Now, as we wrap it up, on the way out here of our Game Changers Summit, a question from one of the young people watching. What will you tell young people who have a game-changing project or idea, but don't have the funds needed to translate their ideas into real projects? Who wants to take that? What would be a message for these young people? Go ahead, Jack. Mm-hmm.
My message to them is to contact me, and I will help you, because very often it is not the need for resource. There is no such a thing in the world that is a good idea if no money chasing it. Usually it is an incomplete idea, and you have to polish it to a level where investment makes sense. And investment need not be always immediately profitable, but in the long term. So just contact me, and I don't know, I type my email address here and see if who reach out to me. I'm here to help you grow your ideas.
Thank you, Jack. Mariana.
Well, I would like to say to just start. When I started, I didn't have resources neither. I don't come from a rich family. I come from a city in the countryside, like very few access to VCs. And I think it's important to not stay still waiting for the ideal conditions and the ideal money to arrive. And I think like putting into place the whole startup mindset that is start small, start with one thing, do like a minimum viable product, and start with that and learn in the way. You will need less resources in your full idea. So it starts with part of the idea. Like, even though it would be ideal to have this amazing software to do that, how can you do it on your own? Like, how can you simulate as a software would do it, but you do it, your colleague do it, parts of the process to validate that concept? Because I agree with Jack that like by doing that, like dividing into slices, the problem you want to solve and what you want to build, you will find resources in the way as you go maturing your idea.
Thank you. Neela, if I may, from your experience, your vast experience also starting companies, what would be your advice?
I mean, Jack and Mariana have already said quite a lot that I wish I could have said, but it's always about starting somewhere, but just starting. I mean, I've been fortunate in my life that I've been in spaces where there would always be a lot of, institutions that one could go to that nurture entrepreneurship, where you get to get risk capital. So I'd always get young people to get closer to those institutions. Universities have been a great training ground for startups, and I believe over time we have seen a lot of universities also having venture funds that help nurture ideas. But it's always about taking time. It takes time before you ever get your first investment, especially when you're starting out and you have very little. And during that time, it's just about building on your idea and just making sure that you strengthen your business case.
Sounds like good advice. Jens, bring it home for us. We got one more minute.
I'll try, Anna Maria, I'll try. I mean, a lot of things have been already mentioned, and probably we can spend an hour or 2 or 3 on some of the advices. And there's always a very specific way, individual way at the end of the day, for each of the entrepreneurs, the upcoming entrepreneurs. Let me just, to add to the things that I think the panelists already have mentioned, I think there is the strong belief, and not only, some hope or some quick ambition, but the strong belief that you need to be successful in your idea. And then you need, of course, the input from others to bounce the idea if everything is really properly reflected of making a business case out of your idea. And you got to have, beside the strong belief, also the stubbornness with, to go through some bad moments, because you will have bad moments for sure. And then you got to think about the people that really can help you in terms of financing this. So I think Neely was already mentioning universities. I mean, there are lots of other sources, family offices, for example. So I mean, if you look at BioNTech, without the strong belief of the founders and some siblings that had invested money in this because they believed in the people. I mean, we should all be clear that there is a big chunk of why people put money to work is because they believe in the people and their capabilities. And that made BioNTech where it is today. Without the money of these people and the belief of them in the founders, BioNTech wouldn't be there, and there would be no Comirnaty. So I think this is, maybe you read the book from Ugo and Eslam. I make a little bit of an advert here on Lightspeed, on the project of how BioNTech has developed. It's actually stories like this are good examples of how you can make it.
All right. Thank you. Great parting closing words, Jens. Thanks for that. Thanks to all of you for participating in today's panel. If you were here, I would applaud you. An amazing session, ladies and gentlemen, that have joined us for these last couple hours. Thank you for your time, for being there with us, to the UNCTAD organizers for making this happen. This recording, if you've enjoyed the event, a recording of the event will be available at a later date that you can either rewatch or share with your friends. Again, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Do take care, and we will see you next time.